My name is Evelyn Potts. I am 13 years old, and the day my parents left for 3 months abroad, they handed me $200 and called it a growth opportunity. "You're practically an adult now," my dad said, zipping up his designer suitcase. My mom nodded, checking her passport one more time. "This is your chance to show us how mature you've become." Mature. That was their word, not mine. I stood in our living room holding $200 bills, crisp, new, like they'd just been withdrawn from the ATM. Not a meal plan, not a babysitter, not even a real hug. Just a distracted pat on my shoulder, the sound of luggage wheels rolling across our hardwood floor, and the front door clicking shut behind them. "I can do this," I whispered to the suddenly silent house, as if saying it could make it true. But my stomach was already twisting into knots. There was no one else here. No one to cook dinner, no one to help with homework, no one who even knew that I'd been left completely alone for 90 days. I tried to tell myself this was some kind of test I could pass. Day 1, I thought, I'll show them I'm responsible. I counted the food in the pantry, half full at best. I checked the fridge, enough for maybe a week if I was careful. I did the math in my head, $200 divided by 90 days. $2.22 per day for food, toiletries, emergencies, everything. The math didn't work. But I shoved that panic down as deep as it would go. If my parents wanted to see how mature I was, then maybe they were about to find out what 3 months of independence really looked like. Because as those weeks crawled forward, the $200 would vanish, the pantry would empty, and the silence in our house would turn into something much darker than loneliness. The weight would fall off my body. The lies would stack up at school. And the evidence folder I started keeping would grow thicker with every passing day. And when they finally came back, tanned, refreshed, and full of stories about their adventure, what they found waiting in our living room made my mother's face go white. "No," she breathed, staring at the CPS worker standing beside me. This can't be happening." But it was. Do you want to know how being left with $200 at 13 turned into the one decision that destroyed my parents' perfect life? Stay to the end, and you'll see exactly how I made sure they would never, ever forget what they did to me. Before we dive deeper, if you've ever felt invisible, unheard, or abandoned by the people who were supposed to protect you, this channel is for you. Subscribe now because you're not alone in this. We're building a community of survivors who refuse to stay silent. And trust me, Evelyn's story is going to remind you why your voice matters. The first morning after they left, I woke up determined to prove everyone wrong. Including myself. I made scrambled eggs for breakfast, just 2, not 3, because I needed to be smart about this. I cleaned the pan immediately, wiped down the counters, and felt a strange surge of pride. See? I could do this. I was doing this. School was easy enough. No one asked questions. No one noticed anything different. Why would they? I looked the same as yesterday. I acted the same. I even turned in my homework on time, which felt like a small victory I wanted to tell someone about. But there was no one to tell. That first week, I treated the house like a game I was winning. I did laundry on Wednesday, the way Mom always did. I vacuumed the living room on Friday. I even scrubbed the bathroom sink because it felt like something a responsible person would do. Every task completed was proof that they'd made the right choice. That I was mature enough. The grocery store trip on day 3 was harder than I expected. I stood in the cereal aisle for 10 minutes trying to calculate which box gave me the most meals per dollar. I bought the giant bag of rice, $8 for something that could last weeks. I grabbed pasta, canned soup, the cheapest bread I could find. I picked up a gallon of milk and then put it back when I realized it would spoil before I could finish it. At the register, I watched the total climb, $38.50. I handed over 2 20s and pocketed the change, trying not to think about how fast the money was disappearing. By day 7, I sat at the kitchen table with a notebook and wrote down every purchase I'd made. Groceries, $60. I stared at the number. In 1 week, I'd burned through almost a third of what was supposed to last 90 days. The math was simple and brutal. If I kept going at this rate, I'd run out of money in 3 weeks. Not 3 months. 3 weeks. I picked up my phone and dialed the international number my dad had scribbled on a sticky note stuck to the fridge. It rang 4 times. Then her voice, bright, recorded, distant, "You've reached Jane. Leave a message." I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. What was I supposed to say? That I'd already messed up? That I wasn't as mature as they thought? That I was scared? I hung up without speaking. They were probably just busy, I told myself. Jet-lagged. Adjusting to the time difference. They'd call me when they settled in. I looked back at my budget sheet. $140 left. 83 days to go. I closed the notebook and made myself a dinner of white rice and canned corn. I ate it slowly, alone at the table, and tried very hard not to do the math again. By week 3, the pantry had started to look like a crime scene, evidence of something wrong, but not quite enough to convict anyone yet. Rice. Instant noodles. 3 cans of green beans. 2 cans of tomato soup. A box of stale crackers I'd found shoved in the back corner. That was it. That was what stood between me and actual hunger for the next 70 days. I'd stopped eating breakfast entirely. Not because I wasn't hungry, I was always hungry now, but because skipping 1 meal meant stretching 2 meals further. Lunch was a pack of instant noodles, the cheap kind that came 6 for $1. Dinner was rice with canned vegetables mixed in, portions so small they barely covered the bottom of my bowl. The hunger was constant now. Not the dramatic, stomach-growling kind you see in movies. Just a low, persistent ache that sat in my chest and made it hard to focus on anything else. At school, Emma invited me to go to the mall after class. "Come on," she said, linking her arm through mine. "We never hang out anymore." "I can't," I said automatically. "I have stuff at home." "You always have stuff at home." She pulled back, studying my face. "Are you okay?" "Yeah, totally fine. Just busy." The lie slid out smooth and practiced. When had I gotten so good at lying? Emma shrugged and walked away, and I felt a strange mix of relief and loneliness. Going to the mall meant buying something, a smoothie, fries, anything. Even $5 felt like a fortune I couldn't afford to lose. In English class, Ms. Rodriguez handed back our essays. Mine had an A- at the top, and underneath, "See me after class?" My stomach dropped. I approached her desk slowly, gripping my backpack straps. "Evelyn," she said gently, closing her laptop. "Is everything all right? You look exhausted." "I'm fine," I said. The automatic response. "You've lost weight. You're distracted. You used to be the first one to raise your hand, and now you barely participate." I could feel her watching me, waiting for the truth. But the truth was too big, too humiliating, too dangerous. "I've just been staying up late reading," I said. "Got really into this book series. Can't put it down, you know?" Her expression didn't change. She didn't believe me, I could see it in her eyes. But she nodded slowly. "Well, make sure you're taking care of yourself. Sleep is important." "I will." "Thanks, Ms. Rodriguez." I left before she could ask anything else. That night, I sat on my bedroom floor with my budget notebook. $89 left. 70 days to go. I was down to $1.27 per day. I flipped to a blank page and wrote a new rule at the top: 1 meal a day. Not 2 small meals. 1. That was the only way the math would work. I closed the notebook and lay down on my bed, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. My stomach was empty. My body was tired. And I was becoming someone I didn't recognize, someone who could lie without flinching, who could smile when asked if everything was okay, who could make hunger feel normal. I wondered if this was what my parents meant by maturity. Day 35. I found the notebook in my desk drawer, left over from last school year. It still had that new paper smell, pages blank and waiting. I sat on my bedroom floor and wrote across the top of the first page in careful block letters, evidence, day 35. Not diary. Not journal. Evidence. Because that's what this was becoming. Not a story I was living through, but a case I was building. Against who, I wasn't sure yet. Maybe against my parents. Maybe against myself for not speaking up sooner. Maybe just against the lie that any of this was okay. I started with the facts. Cold, simple, impossible to argue with. Money remaining, $73. Days left, 55. Calls to parents, 11 attempts. 2 brief responses. I wrote down what I'd eaten that day. 1 pack of instant noodles. Half a can of green beans. Nothing else. I wrote down yesterday too. And the day before. The pattern was obvious, even to me. This wasn't a diet. This was starvation in slow motion. I grabbed my phone and started taking pictures. First, the pantry. I opened the doors wide and snapped a photo of the nearly empty shelves, 2 cans of soup, a bag of rice with maybe 3 servings left, the box of stale crackers. It looked worse in the photo than it did in real life, which was saying something. Then the fridge. A bottle of ketchup. 3 eggs. A carton of milk that had gone sour 2 days ago but I hadn't thrown out yet because throwing away food felt like a crime now. I photographed the stack of mail on the kitchen counter, bills I didn't know how to pay. Electric company. Water. Internet. Each one stamped with red letters, past due or final notice. Finally, I walked to the bathroom and stood in front of the mirror. I barely recognized the girl staring back at me. My cheekbones were sharper. My collarbones jutted out beneath my t-shirt. Dark circles sat heavy under my eyes, like bruises I couldn't scrub away. My hair looked dull, unwashed. When had I last had the energy to shower? I lifted my phone and took the picture. Click. That one was the hardest to look at. I went back to my room and added the photos to the notebook, printing them out from our old printer and taping them to the pages with dates written underneath in pen. I didn't know what I was going to do with this collection yet. I didn't have a plan. But I knew one thing: if this all fell apart, if I ended up in a hospital, or if someone finally noticed and asked questions, I wanted proof. I wanted timestamps. I wanted evidence that couldn't be argued away with excuses about independence or growth opportunities. I wrote one more line at the bottom of the page, day 35. Still alone. Still surviving. Barely. Then I closed the notebook and slid it under my mattress, where no one would find it unless they were looking. This wasn't a diary anymore. This was my insurance policy. The envelope came on a Tuesday, thick and official looking with a red stamp across the front, final notice. I opened it at the kitchen table, my hands shaking before I even saw the number. Electric bill. Amount due, $180. Payment due, 14 days. I had $54 to my name. For a long moment, I just stared at it. The math was so impossibly broken that my brain couldn't even process it. Even if I spent nothing, $0 on food, on anything, I still couldn't pay this bill. And if I paid the bill, I'd have negative $126. Which wasn't just broke. It was underwater. I picked up my phone. My finger hovered over the call button for 30 seconds before I pressed it. This time, I hit record first. I didn't know why. Instinct, maybe. Or maybe I'd just learned not to trust anything anymore, not even conversations with my own mother. The phone rang twice. Evelyn? My mother's voice came through sharp and impatient. This really isn't a good time. We're literally about to go on a tour of. Mom, I need help. A sigh. long, exaggerated, the kind that said I was already being unreasonable. "What is it?" The electric bill came. "It's $180. I only have $54 left." Silence. But not the thoughtful kind. The annoyed kind. "Well," she said slowly, like she was talking to someone very stupid, "just use the emergency credit card we left you." My chest tightened. "There is no credit card." "You didn't leave one." More silence. Longer this time. "Are you sure?" I could have sworn. "I'm sure, Mom. You left me $200 cash." "That's it. And I've been here for 7 weeks and I'm almost out and I don't know what to." "Evelyn." Her voice turned cold. "You're 13 years old, not a baby. Figure it out. Ask a neighbor. Get creative." "I don't know. We're in the middle of a once-in-a-lifetime trip and I can't just drop everything because you can't manage a simple utility bill." "But I don't have the money to." "Then I guess you'll learn to budget better, won't you?" The line went dead. Click. I sat there staring at my phone screen, at the call duration, 1 minute, 34 seconds. Recorded and saved. My hands weren't shaking anymore. They were completely still. I opened the voice memo app and played it back, just to make sure it had captured everything. It had. Every word. Every sigh. Every dismissive, casual cruelty. That night, I added a new page to the evidence notebook. Day 49. Electric bill, $180 due in 14 days. Money left, $54. Called mom at 6:47 p.m. Recording attached. I printed out a screenshot of the call log and taped it to the page. Then I wrote one more line, underlined twice. She told me to figure it out. She told me I wasn't a baby. I closed the notebook and sat in the dark kitchen, too exhausted to move. The lights were still on. For now. But I knew, deep in that hollow place where hunger lived, that they wouldn't be for much longer. Ms. Rodriguez asked me to stay after class on a Thursday. I knew it was coming. I'd felt her watching me all week, her eyes following me when I thought I wasn't paying attention. The other students filed out, their voices fading down the hallway. The classroom went quiet except for the hum of the air conditioning. I stood by her desk, gripping my backpack straps so hard my knuckles went white. "Evelyn," she said gently, gesturing to the chair beside her desk. "Sit. Please." I sat. She closed her laptop and turned to face me fully, and I could see it in her expression, the concern, the worry, the thing I'd been trying so hard to hide from everyone. "Are you okay?" she asked. Not casual. Not passing. Really asking. "I'm fine," I said automatically. "You're not fine." Her voice was soft but firm. "You've lost weight. A lot of weight. You barely participate anymore. You fall asleep in class. You look." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "You look like you're not being taken care of. Is everything all right at home?" The lie was right there, ready on my tongue. The same lie I'd been telling for 9 weeks. "I'm fine. Everything's fine. Just tired. Just stressed about school." I opened my mouth to say it. But what came out instead was, "My parents have been gone for 9 weeks." Ms. Rodriguez blinked. "Gone?" "They went abroad. They left me at home. Alone. They gave me $200 and said I was mature enough to handle it." The words were tumbling out now, faster than I could stop them. "But I'm not. I can't. I have $12 left and I don't know when they're coming back and I haven't eaten a real meal in weeks and the electricity is about to get shut off and I..." My voice cracked. I clamped my mouth shut, horrified. Ms. Rodriguez's face had gone very still. Not shocked, something worse than shocked. Something like quiet fury mixed with heartbreak. "Evelyn," she said carefully. "How old are you?" 13. And your parents left you completely alone? For 9 weeks? No adult supervision at all? I nodded. She stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Stay here, she said, already reaching for her phone. Don't move. Don't leave. Just stay right here, okay? Ms. Rodriguez, You didn't do anything wrong. Her voice was fierce now, protective. Do you understand me? You didn't fail. They did. She stepped into the hallway, phone pressed to her ear. Through the door, I could hear fragments of her conversation. 13 years old, alone for over 2 months, yes, I'm certain. How soon can someone get here? I sat frozen in the chair, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. I'd done it. I'd told the truth. The thing I'd been avoiding for 9 weeks because telling meant admitting I couldn't handle it, that I wasn't mature enough, that I'd failed the test my parents had set. But sitting there in that empty classroom, listening to Ms. Rodriguez fight for me in the hallway, I realized something. There was no test. There never had been. There was only abandonment. And I was finally going to stop pretending it was anything else. They arrived at my house 2 hours after Ms. Rodriguez made the call. 2 women in professional clothes with kind eyes and badges clipped to their belts. One introduced herself as Carmen, a social worker with Child Protective Services. The other was her supervisor, Maria. I let them in, my hands trembling as I unlocked the door. Carmen sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd eaten alone for 63 days, and folded her hands calmly. Evelyn, we're here to help. Can you tell us what's been going on? I could have minimized it. I could have protected my parents one last time. Instead, I went to my room and came back with the evidence notebook. I placed it on the table between us and opened to the first page. Evidence, day 35. Carmen picked it up carefully, like it was fragile. She read silently, her expression growing darker with each page. The food logs. The budget breakdowns. The photos of the empty pantry, the unpaid bills, my own deteriorating face. You documented all of this? She asked quietly. I needed proof, I said. In case no one believed me. We believe you. Maria was already photographing the pantry with her phone. She opened the fridge, now completely empty except for condiments. She checked the mail stack. 3 more final notices had arrived since the electric bill. Carmen gestured to my phone on the table. You mentioned recorded phone calls? I played her the conversation with my mother. The dismissiveness. The figure it out. The click of disconnection. Carmen's jaw tightened, but her voice stayed gentle. How much money do you have left right now? $12. When was the last time you ate a full meal? I had to think about it. I don't remember. She closed the notebook and looked at me directly. Evelyn, I need you to hear this. This is not your fault. You didn't fail. They did. Parents have a legal and moral obligation to care for their children. What they did, leaving you alone for this long with inadequate resources, this is neglect. Severe neglect. And you should never have been put in this position. Something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked open, like I'd been holding my breath for 2 months and finally could exhale. We're going to place you in temporary foster care while we investigate, Carmen continued. Mrs. Okafor is a licensed foster parent and a friend of your teacher. She's expecting you tonight. Is that okay? I nodded, unable to speak. That night, I sat at Mrs. Okafor's dinner table and stared at the plate in front of me. Jollof rice. Baked chicken. Steamed vegetables. Sliced mango. Real food. More food than I'd seen in weeks. Go ahead, honey, Mrs. Okafor said gently. Eat as much as you want. I picked up my fork. Took a bite. Then another. And then I started crying. Not sad crying. Not scared crying. Something else entirely, relief so overwhelming it had nowhere to go but out. Mrs. Okafor came around the table and put her hand on my shoulder. She didn't say anything. She just stood there while I cried and ate and cried some more, finally understanding what enough was supposed to feel like. And that moment right there? That was the beginning of the end for Luke and Jane Potts. Because once Evelyn stopped protecting them, the evidence she'd been collecting was about to become their worst nightmare. If you're wondering how a notebook and some recordings can destroy a parent's entire defense, keep watching. The confrontation is coming, and it's more satisfying than you can imagine. The email arrived on a Tuesday morning while I was eating breakfast at Mrs. Okafor's table. Real breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, orange juice. I'd gained 3 pounds in 1 week just from eating normal meals. My phone buzzed. I looked down at the screen and saw my mother's name. Subject line, "What have you done?" I opened it. "What have you done? Do you know what this is doing to our reputation? We just received a notification from Child Protective Services saying we're under investigation for neglect." Neglect, Evelyn. Do you understand how this makes us look? We trusted you. We gave you an opportunity to prove you were mature and responsible, and this is how you repay us. By calling strangers and making up lies about your own parents? We are cutting our trip short and coming home to deal with this mess you've created. I cannot believe you would do this to your own family. I read it twice. Then a third time. Not one question about whether I was okay. Not one "Are you safe?" or "Are you hurt?" or "We're sorry." Just panic. Just damage control. Just concern about their reputation, their image, their trip being ruined. I set down my fork. Mrs. Okafor looked up from her newspaper, concerned. "Everything all right?" "My parents emailed," I said quietly. She nodded slowly. "Do you want to talk about it?" "No. I want to respond." I opened a new email and typed one line. Just one. That's all it needed. You left your 13-year-old daughter alone for 3 months with $200. What did you think would happen? My finger hovered over the send button. The old Evelyn, the one from 11 weeks ago, would have deleted it. Would have apologized. Would have said "I'm sorry and please don't be mad" and begged them to understand. But that Evelyn had starved. She'd rationed pasta like currency and skipped meals and lied to teachers and documented her own deterioration because no one else was paying attention. That Evelyn was gone. I added Carmen's email to the CC line. Then Maria's. Then I hit send. 3 seconds later, my phone rang. My mother's number. I didn't answer. It rang again. And again. I turned off my phone and finished my breakfast. Mrs. Okafor watched me quietly, a small smile on her face. "Proud of you," she said simply. "For what?" "For standing up for yourself. For telling the truth. That takes courage most adults don't have." I looked down at my plate, empty now, actually empty because I'd eaten everything on it, not because there wasn't enough food to begin with. "I'm done protecting them," I said. "Good," Mrs. Okafor replied. "It was never your job to protect them in the first place. It was their job to protect you." She was right. And for the first time in 11 weeks, I felt like maybe, just maybe, someone finally was. Carmen came to Mrs. Okafor's house on Saturday morning with a laptop and a folder thick with official documents. We sat at the dining room table, and she spread everything out like we were planning a presentation. Which, I guess, we were. "Your parents are returning next week," Carmen said. "When they arrive, there will be a meeting, you, them, me, Maria, and possibly a police officer. We need to be prepared." She opened the evidence notebook I'd given her. It had been in CPS custody for a week, photocopied and documented and turned into something official. "This," she said, tapping the notebook, "is remarkable. Most kids your age wouldn't have thought to document like this. It shows clarity, intention, and honestly, it's going to be very hard for your parents to argue against." We started organizing everything chronologically. Carmen had scanned all my photos and created a timeline on her laptop. Week 1, me looking tired but relatively normal. Week 3, thinner, dark circles forming. Week 5, visibly malnourished, cheekbones sharp, eyes hollow. Week 7, I barely recognized myself. Week 9, the photo Ms. Rodriguez had taken at school after I'd told her the truth. I looked like a different person entirely. This is powerful, Carmen said quietly. Visual evidence of neglect is very difficult to dispute. Next, we reviewed the budget spreadsheets. The math was simple and damning. $200 divided by 90 days. Every grocery receipt. The impossible utility bills. The $12 I'd had left when CPS intervened. Then the phone recordings. Carmen played back the conversation with my mother, the dismissiveness, the figure it out, the click of disconnection. You recorded this? Carmen asked. I pressed record before I called. I don't know why. I just had a feeling I'd need it. Smart girl, she said. Very smart. Finally, there were the video diaries. I'd forgotten about those short clips I'd recorded on my phone during the worst weeks. Just me, talking to the camera, documenting what was happening because I needed someone, anyone, to witness it. Day 47, my hands shaking as I showed the camera a can of soup I was splitting into 3 meals. Day 68, me crying because I couldn't afford soap and I was starting to smell and I was terrified someone at school would notice. Day 82, whispering I just want them to come home over and over like a prayer. Carmen paused the video. Her eyes were wet. Evelyn, she said carefully, when we present this to your parents, it's going to be difficult. They're going to make excuses. They're going to try to minimize what happened. But I need you to understand something. She looked at me directly. You don't have to perform suffering. You don't have to cry or break down or prove to anyone that this was hard. The evidence speaks for itself. All you have to do is tell the truth. Can you do that? I looked at the timeline on the screen. The photos. The budget. The recordings. The videos. This wasn't a defense. I wasn't defending myself against accusations of being dramatic or ungrateful or immature. This was a prosecution. And the defendants were my parents. Yes, I said. I can do that. They arrived on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 90 days after they'd left. I heard the taxi pull up outside. Heard the trunk slam. Heard my mother's laugh, bright and carefree, as she said something to my father about how good it felt to be home. I sat on the couch in our living room. I wasn't alone. Carmen sat beside me, her hand resting gently on my shoulder. Maria stood near the window. And Officer Brooks, a uniformed police officer, stood by the door with his arms crossed and his expression carefully neutral. On the TV screen, my video diary was paused on day 47. My face frozen mid-sentence, hollow-eyed and thin. The front door opened. My parents walked in pulling designer suitcases, tanned and relaxed and smiling. My mother wore a new scarf, probably from Paris. My father had on sunglasses he pushed up onto his head as he stepped inside. They stopped when they saw us. The smiles died. What? My mother started, her eyes darting from Carmen to the officer to me. What's going on? Evelyn, why are there people in our house? I didn't answer. Carmen stood up. Mr. and Mrs. Potts, I'm Carmen Ruiz with Child Protective Services. This is my supervisor, Maria Chan, and Officer Brooks. We need to speak with you about your daughter's care over the past 3 months. My father's face went red. Now wait just a minute. Carmen held up a hand. Please, sit down. They didn't sit. They stood frozen in the doorway, suitcases still in hand, looking around like they'd walked into the wrong house. Carmen picked up the remote and pressed play. My voice filled the room. Day 47. I'm splitting this can of soup into 3 meals because it's all I have left and I don't know what else to do and I'm so hungry I can't think straight anymore and... My mother made a small noise. Turn that off. Carmen didn't turn it off. Day 68 appeared on screen. Me, crying, explaining that I couldn't afford soap or shampoo and I was starting to smell and I was terrified. Turn it off, my mother said louder. Evelyn, what is this? Why did you? Day 82. Me whispering, I just want them to come home. I just want them to come home. Please. Please come home. The video ended. The room went silent. My father's suitcase hit the floor with a thud. Evelyn, my mother breathed, her voice cracking. We can explain. It's not what it looks like. We gave you money. We trusted you to. Carmen's voice cut through, sharp and professional. Mrs. Potts, you'll have the opportunity to explain in court. Right now, you're being formally investigated for child endangerment and severe neglect. You left your 13-year-old daughter alone for 90 days with inadequate resources and no supervision. We didn't, my father started. We have documented evidence, Maria said, stepping forward with the file. Budget records. Photos. Recorded phone conversations. Medical documentation of malnutrition. Testimony from her school. This is not a misunderstanding. My mother's face had gone white. She looked at me, really looked at me, for the first time since walking in. I saw the moment she registered it. The weight I'd lost. The way my clothes hung loose. The dark circles. The damage. No, she whispered. No, this isn't. But it was. Officer Brooks cleared his throat. You'll need to come to the station for questioning. I watched my parents' faces crumble. Watched the reality hit them like a physical blow. And for the first time in 3 months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten existed. Safe. I felt safe. The family court judge was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and reading glasses that sat low on her nose. She'd spent 2 hours reviewing the evidence, every photo, every receipt, every recording, every page of my notebook. When she finally looked up, her expression was carved from stone. I've been a family court judge for 23 years, she said, her voice filling the courtroom. And this is one of the most clear-cut cases of parental neglect I have ever seen. My parents sat at the defendant's table with their lawyer, both of them looking smaller than I remembered. My mother had cried through most of the hearing. My father had tried to argue that they'd made a mistake in judgment and never intended for things to go that far. The judge was unmoved. Luke and Jane Potts, you are found guilty of severe parental neglect and child endangerment. You are hereby sentenced to 2 years probation, 200 hours of community service, mandatory parenting classes, and all custody rights are restricted pending completion of a reunification program. She paused, looking directly at me where I sat beside Carmen. That is, if the minor in question even wishes to pursue reunification. Which, based on her testimony, she does not. My mother's lawyer started to object, but the judge held up her hand. The evidence is overwhelming. You abandoned a 13-year-old child for 3 months with grossly inadequate resources. The psychological and physical harm caused is documented and undeniable. This court's priority is the child's safety and well-being, not your convenience or reputation. The gavel came down. Final. That gavel coming down? That's the sound of a child finally being heard. And if you made it this far in Evelyn's story, it means something resonated with you. Maybe you've been that kid. Maybe you know someone who has. Either way, subscribe if you believe that every neglected child deserves a voice, deserves justice, and deserves better. Drop a comment and let me know, what would you have done in Evelyn's situation? I read every single one. 3 months later, I sat in Mrs. Okafor's kitchen doing homework while she cooked dinner. The smell of curry filled the house, warm, rich, safe. My grades had gone from barely passing back up to A's and B's. I joined the debate team and discovered I was good at arguing, probably because I'd had plenty of practice standing up for myself. I'd made friends. Real friends who invited me places and actually meant it. Emma had asked me last week if I missed my parents. I'd thought about it carefully before answering. I miss the parents I thought I had, I'd said. The ones I imagined when I was little. But those people never really existed. I don't miss the ones who left me behind. She'd nodded like she understood. Mrs. Okafor had started the paperwork for permanent foster placement. I'd told Carmen I didn't want reunification. Not now. Maybe not ever. My parents had sent letters, apologies mixed with justifications, love mixed with excuses. I hadn't responded. That night at dinner, Mrs. Okafor asked how debate practice went. Good, I said. We're preparing arguments about child welfare policy. She smiled. I bet you have some strong opinions on that topic. A few, I admitted. I did. I'd learned that sometimes the most mature thing you can do isn't proving you can handle mistreatment. It's refusing to accept it in the first place. I'd learned that suffering in silence isn't loyalty, it's self-destruction. And I'd learned that my voice, the one my parents had tried to silence with 3,000 miles of distance, was the most powerful evidence I'd ever need. I'd used it to save myself. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.